Hi, I'm Ben Chu.
And I'm Jen Bullock.
And welcome to Med Spa Secrets.
So today we're going to be talking about a topic that a lot of people are really not super comfortable with, and it is sales. But we're going to talk about a little different spin on sales, and we're going to be covering selling as a service.
Like it should be.
Yeah.
So I think when a lot of people are first starting out in business, any business, med spa or otherwise, if they don't really have a background in sales and marketing, I think people tend to feel like weird or icky around the concept of selling. Mm-hmm. And I think that people try to kind of like avoid those bad feelings by not selling, but then they struggle to actually have a business that actually makes money and supports their lives and all of that. So I think we'll just talk a little bit about like our experiences with selling, overcoming some of the common issues and stuff that we both had and that are common to other people. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your experience early on in the early days of the med spa with selling.
Absolutely. So some of the ways that being uncomfortable with selling shows up is sometimes it'll be like just letting leads or consults leave without asking them to book an appointment. For me, when I first started out, I was doing some high ticket sales I was doing these dinner talks. And so I would invite people over, and I didn't really understand like how it was supposed to work necessarily. I had this framework that I was trying to follow. And I would invite people and I would do a presentation, and I would spend a lot of money like hosting these very expensive dinners. And when I first started, I invited people that I already knew, my very first one. And there was about 25 different people there, and I spent thousands of dollars on this event, and I sold 2 spots. And it was because my patients had came really already knew me and they liked me. Well, the second time I hosted one, which was about 2 or 3 weeks later, it was all people who didn't know me. And I did the exact same presentation, and at the end of it, not one single person bought. And so here I was out thousands of dollars, and I didn't really understand why. And it wasn't until later that I was able to go back and look, and I never asked for the sale. I just talked about my program and didn't give people any opportunity to buy. And so it was like this kind of awkward period of at the end, and everybody just sat there and stood there, and then everybody left. So I think sometimes just being willing to and understand how to get comfortable in telling people what their next step is, asking for it, right?
Asking for the close.
Yes.
Sort of closing the loop of, all right, now you've done your presentation or your spiel or whatever the case is, whether it doesn't have to be like a dinner talk, right? But like generally speaking, people don't do things unless they're asked to do them. So it's really important to actually ask for the sale or ask for the close at the end of a selling interaction.
Right. Tell people what the next step is and how to take it, right?
And I think that really it's those icky feelings, or that kind of, I don't want to feel like the used car salesman or whatever, that gets people all the way to their end of their amazing sales presentation, and then they're just kind of like, okay, man, I hope somebody buys something now, but I'm totally not going to ask them to buy it.
Right. Absolutely.
And when we had the gym in the early days before the gym became successful, I did the exact same thing too, before I was able to learn how to overcome my issues around sales and money and asking for money or asking for the close. We would hold free workouts open to the public every Saturday.
Yeah.
And people would come all the time, and they would do the free workout, and then I'd just be all like, all right, thanks for coming, bye, see you at the next free one, without ever being like, okay, cool, so are you ready to sign up for a membership? Like you said, that was a really great workout. What are some of your health goals? Let's actually move you now into the next step or the next phase, which is asking for the close, selling the program or the service, and then moving into fulfillment and creating that relationship based on the sale.
Right. I think also that once you finally do get your first sale or somebody books, whether you've asked for it or not, maybe they know that they want it. So they'll come in, they'll do their treatment, and then you let them leave without maybe offering them the next thing that they need.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, I think those same sort of feelings, again, those internal feelings, they pop up until you've done the actual, like the personal work or the self-development and the internal work, and they manifest in a lot of different ways. It's not just not asking for that first sale or that first close. It can come up as not doing cross sells or upsells, right? Like they come in, you do the thing because maybe they bought it even though you didn't ask them to. Right. And then you're still uncomfortable with selling. So then they don't move on to the next step, right? Because obviously you want to develop a long-term relationship with your patients or your clients, depending on your niche or industry. And it's important that they continue to buy so that they stay your patient or your client.
Right.
I think some other ways this kind of manifests in is patients or clients showing up and wanting to do things like basically you let them run the show.
Yes.
Because you're uncomfortable with asking or making the sale. So like they make up their own treatment plans, or in the case of the gym, their own workout plans and nutrition plans or whatever. Or they do things kind of here and there a la carte because you're not like stepping up and being the expert and selling them on what they should be doing. One really great quote from a mentor that I've really got a lot from, Grant Cardone. He says that every human interaction is a sale, and either you're selling them on what you think they should be doing, or they're selling you on what they think they should be doing.
Right. And I feel like that happens all the time, especially in aesthetic medicine. People will come in and they're telling you what they've seen on TV or what they've seen on social media with an idea of what they want. But it is our job as practitioners and really to build out our relationship with them and our authority in just our specialty. It's our job to identify what they actually need. And it really shouldn't be about selling just for the pure purpose of selling a syringe of filler. But when I first started, people would come in and they'd be like, I want cheek filler, or I want nasolabial filler. And at first I would just do what they wanted, right? I wasn't comfortable with stepping into what I know is best and what I know is going to serve them. And I wasn't comfortable in telling them what they needed. And now people will come in and they'll say, oh, I'm here, these jowls are hanging here and they bothered me. And I was talking to a patient the other day and they were commenting on how when they came in for one thing, I told them, oh, no, that's not what you need. This is what you need and this is why. And making them follow my treatment plan, right? But when we're brand new, we're not comfortable stepping into that. We want to just give the patient what they want or give the client what they want. And we have to be willing to sell them what they need, and also being willing to let them leave if maybe we're not a good fit for that, right?
Totally. And I think that during those interactions, especially before you've done the work on getting comfortable with sales and selling, these hang-ups and these emotional feelings can pop up in a lot of different ways that are not just not asking for the close. I think that people, and just from personal experience, and I think you can probably touch on this too from your experience, all sorts of things pop up, like price aversion, not being willing to say what the price is, like confidently. You're going to be like, we're going to do all this amazing stuff for you. You're going to look 10 years younger, and that's going to be $3,000.
Yeah.
Or you like and I'm sorry, that's going to be like $3,000?
Yes, 100%. Or the other thing is sometimes we are afraid to ask for the money and we instead just undercharge, right? So we cheapen our service because we have our own feelings about what we think it's worth or what we think people are willing to pay. And oftentimes our feelings have nothing to do with what the person is willing to pay, right?
Totally. People project their own feelings about like personal worthiness and value and imposter syndrome and all of these things, and they project it onto a patient who has absolutely none of that going on inside their own head.
Right.
And they've got their own stuff going on, and you don't know what their financial situation is like. And frankly, if it's important to someone, the price almost doesn't, as long as the value is there. And I think that's something that people that are new to sales really struggle with understanding, the sort of price versus value dynamic.
Right. Right.
And I think a lot of that comes from, I mean, really it's all about mindset, right? It's about the
100%.
mindset of the provider or the salesperson, depending on whatever the case may be. And the fact of the matter is that most people are not rich.
Right.
Right? So that means that most people are coming from a background of either middle class or poverty, middle class or poor, and then they take that and they project that onto whoever they're selling to, who is very likely also going to be in the middle class area.
But when they show up, here's the thing, like when somebody shows up in an aesthetic clinic, most of them have already done a little bit of research. They understand that it is luxury. They understand that it's going to cost some money, and they've arrived with some kind of a budget in their mind. Now, sometimes we shock them with the reality of what it really costs, but they're coming in knowing that they're going to spend some money. And I think when we come to the place, for me, I came from a lot of poverty. I was very, very poor growing up. I was a foster kid, and, working in healthcare was my avenue to some affluence, right? My education brought me to a place where I had money. But when I first started doing this, I came to it with that lack of abundance. And I was afraid to ask people for money because from my experience, I would have never had the opportunity to spend money on something like, I wouldn't have spent $3,000 on filler. I wouldn't have spent $135 on a facial. I didn't start using or even thinking about anti-aging stuff until I was through with grad school and had a little bit of money to burn and started doing this for a living. So having somebody who is 35 years old or 40 years old walking into my clinic, I couldn't wrap my head around the idea of somebody having that expendable income. But when they come in our door, they do have that expendable income or they wouldn't be here at all. So for me, I had to get to the space where I was comfortable just accepting, because we don't know how much money they have, what their situation is, what their budget is, any of those sorts of things. So we have to just do our very best to show up and provide them their options and being willing to ask, so what were we looking at for budget today? Those are things that you need to address, and then you can help them make the best decisions based on what they can afford, what they want to do now, and really it comes back to building those longer term treatment plans and all of that. But
yeah, it's all about finding out what's important to them, what they find value in, and not projecting your own past, your own hang-ups, your own emotions onto them and the interaction. But that does actually bring up a really good point about price and budget. And in terms of sales, oftentimes when you're making a sale, people are super interesting, right? So generally speaking, most people don't necessarily want to be told exactly what to do without some amount of pushback or back and forth or whatever, which is why even when somebody wants to buy a product or wants to buy a service, they'll usually throw up at least one objection or a couple objections to make you overcome them and show that you really are the expert, or this thing really is the thing that is going to provide you with the value that you're speaking or seeking. And really the most common objection across most industries is the price objection. And in reality, the price objection, when it comes up, is very rarely ever truly about price. It's about value. They're trying to find out, does the value of what you are offering exceed the price of what you're asking me to pay for it?
Right.
Maybe you can speak to that a little bit about in the context of price objections in aesthetic situations where someone brings up a price. Oh yeah, I really want to do this, but that's maybe a little bit outside of my budget, or it's more than I thought it was going to be. And then they go ahead and just do it anyway once you talk to them more about it. Can you talk about maybe why that happens or what you see when that does happen?
Well, I think, so there's a couple of things, but I think that when people come in and they're thrown off by the price, it's because we actually haven't done our job showing them how it's going to serve them and meet their desired outcome, right? They're coming to us with one thing and maybe they're saying, oh, I feel like I look tired all the time, or people tell me I look mad. And if I tell them it's going to be $800 to get you to do Botox, but I don't actually show them how it will solve their problem, which when it really comes down to how they feel about themselves, right? If I don't do a good job explaining how what I can offer is going to meet what's really at the core of what's bringing them in, then I haven't done my job. I haven't expressed enough of understanding for what it is that they're actually seeking. So like it should be a conversation, right? And it should be helping them understand how it is that what we have to offer is meeting what they're saying. It really is asking probing questions and reflecting back to them what we've heard them say. And did I get that right? And being able to show how what it is that I have, no matter what the price tag, is going to resolve that inner wound. I mean, because when women show up here, that's really what it's about. We're aging, and and not just women, but primarily that's who we see. There's a loss of identity. There's a fear of not being adequate or important. As women age, we become less relevant, and there's so much that's put on society to look a certain way and be a certain way. And so when people come in, it really isn't about just doing something to make themselves feel good, or it's not like getting your hair done. It's really about being able to hold on to who we feel like we are inside, right? And like what we see when we're looking in the mirror. So, I mean, really it has to do with connecting down with the reason why they're here and showing them how we can help them, right?
Totally. And generally speaking, I think you'd probably agree that and this is why probably you mentioned asking the probing questions too, is that whatever kind of comes up first is generally the surface thing, and the real drivers are going to be a couple levels deeper, right? Like generally it's going to be something that's related to one of the three core drivers of people, which is something related to their wealth, their health, or their relationships.
Right.
And like women or anybody don't want Botox because they want Botox, like just to have it, right? It's because they're experiencing the signs and symptoms of aging. They don't like that. They want to do something about it because they feel like it is affecting something in relation to their health, their wealth, or their relationships.
Right.
But I think you're a master of having those conversations and resolving those issues and getting these ladies the help that they want and need.
Right. There is another piece though. I think that if you haven't done a good job with connecting with them on a real personal level, then there's like a subtle distrust between, right?
Yeah.
So if they feel, first and all,
like you're just being that sleazy car salesman and just trying to sell them just to sell them.
Yes, and if they feel like when we're weirded out about asking somebody for the money, there is a little like energetic hesitation. And I feel like we have this like subtle underlying of being able to read people, even if we don't know what we're reading. Yeah. So if you have hesitation, or if you have not connected with them, they're not going to have the ability to move forward because they don't trust you. They feel something's off, but they don't know what. And so I think that that's really important, is just being willing to connect, right?
Totally agree. And if you have that hesitation, they're going to have the hesitation, and you're going to hesitate and really struggle to, again, ask for that close.
Right.
Like we were talking about before. It's going to be really awkward when you finally get to that point. So let's maybe talk a little bit about like what actually is asking for the close. What does that look like? I know that I have my favorite ways of asking for a close on a sale, which is generally the assumed close, which is basically assuming that, and you have to build some amount of rapport, obviously, with your prospect by the time you do the assumed close. But if you feel like you've done a good job discovering what their drivers are, that health, wealth, or relationship issue, connect it to the issues that they're seeing and feeling, and then do a good job of connecting that to the value that you can provide them with your solution or service, then my preferred way is to assume that at that point they are going to buy. Yep. And I just like to say, okay, would you like to use cash, card, check? When can we schedule you? Right. What about you?
Well, I think that I will just say, so are you ready to schedule that? I'm really, I guess I still have just a little bit of hesitation sometimes around money stuff. And so my assumed close is about scheduling the appointment. And for me, it just feels more comfortable than asking about, how we're going to do this, cash, card, or credit, or whatever it is. But for me, I'm like, so are we ready to schedule this now? And they'll say yes. And I think probably I don't know what my close rates are now, but
you're up there in the maybe 90% plus. If somebody comes to a consult with you, usually they are moving forward into treatment.
Right. Which part of that really has to do with how we qualify people from the moment that we get on the phone with them, and then just the connection and the way that we structure our consultations. And really, just for me, I know that what I'm offering them is the very best. And for the small amount of people that aren't ready to move forward, that's okay with me, because they're not really either our patient prototype or our avatar, or there's something that they're really just not at a place. Sometimes people really won't have any idea how much a syringe of filler costs or how much a Botox treatment costs. I have had people that have just shown up and they thought that Botox was $14, not $14 a unit. So those kinds of things are a mismatch, but we still give them a really great experience. I still give them an incredible treatment plan, and if and when they're ready, then they can book, right? So
absolutely. And I think in the case of situations where people are still super uncomfortable with asking for that close or getting to the end of the consult or the sales interaction and struggling to close, generally I feel personally like they've not necessarily done the best job of explaining the price or value versus results sort of index.
Yeah.
Like, it's really important that the patients understand that we're a very premium practice. We charge high rates. We are the most expensive clinic in our area. We work to stay the most expensive clinic in our area. If we hear that a competitor has raised their rates to similar to ours, we raise our rates again so that we stay the premium place. And there's really important reasons why we do this. It affects patient outcomes, patient relationships. When people pay premium rates for premium services, they pay attention more.
they do.
They get better outcomes and results. They actually follow their aftercare. They believe in the process more. Generally speaking, like, most people will assume that if they are buying the premium thing or the premium service, that it's premium for a reason.
Absolutely.
Right? Like,
there's more value to it.
Absolutely.
Right?
And conversely, charging more allows you to provide more value with it.
Way better services. Yes. Yes.
So
there is so much to be said. The thing is that if you are a Groupon clinic and you are losing money just to get in front of somebody, first of all, you're not going to be attracting the right type of client, right? You attract patients that are really hard to service, that are looking...
clinic hoppers.
Yes, they're looking for the next big deal. And I mean, I know that that's not true all the time. You will, by chance, get a couple of gems in that little mix, but by far, they're the hardest clients to serve. And then you don't really have space in your margins to be able to provide extra things that build relationship, right?
Right, to pay staff for extra hours to send out handwritten cards, to provide special little gifts.
Yeah.
To provide a luxury experience when they're at the spa, providing them with beverages and spending extra money on creating a beautiful, relaxing, comfortable environment. These are just things that a more, budget and not sales or premium focused med spa is going to struggle to even have the extra revenue to provide while still paying themselves and their staff.
Yeah.
And something that, a quote from one of our mentors that we both really like, Dan Kennedy, he often says there is no competitive advantage in being the second cheapest in your market. And I think what he means by saying that is that if you can't make all the margin and all the money that you need while being the cheapest, then there's no advantage in being second cheapest, so you might as well just be premium.
Exactly. Because nobody's going to come to the second cheapest place, right? They're either going to go to...
Or they do, but then they're going to, just go to the actual cheapest place. They're going to be a one and done or a clinic hopper or something like that.
And we all know what those patients are. And they are always popping in, and they're the hardest to serve, and they're the ones that are going to leave you crappy reviews. And we don't want those. Those are not the people we want.
So, how do we get over kind of some of these, icky feelings, used car salesman type feelings or hang-ups around money and sales. I know for me personally, something that really was transformational for me was when I learned a quote by J. Abrams that basically is that if you truly believe that what you are doing is in the best interest of and the best service for your prospect and will provide them the result that they need and that they're looking for, that it's actually your moral obligation to sell to them so that they can actually get what they need. Because otherwise they might go get something else or not even actually get any help at all.
And that is so powerful. I had a very similar experience when I heard that. And the thing is too, knowing that with as much like heart and soul and energy that I put into building my practice, I have the best trainings provided. I have the top of the line technology. I'm consistently doing all of the stuff to make sure that what I am providing is the best. I feel like I am putting my patients in harm's way if I don't offer what it is that I have to sell and they go down the street to someone who doesn't do all of those things, right? So for me, that was like, that did 100% hit home. So how do we get past feeling funky? First and foremost, really getting the training and the mentors, but practice. For me, I was so uncomfortable. I have a couple of procedures that are like $4,500 or $6,000, and I had to sit in the mirror and say, $4,500, $4,500, $4,500. It's $4,500, and not have a $4,500.
Yeah.
But it requires consistent practice so that it becomes ingrained and it's not comfortable. We have scripts that we follow. And of course, when you first start doing scripts, it feels awkward.
It feels scripted.
We've had some really incredible sales training opportunities come in. Terry Ross came into our practice and she brought some beginning scripts. And I remember how uncomfortable I felt going back and forth. I'm like, I could never say that. I could never ask a patient that. But the more that I practiced, and we did like actual role playing, me with the staff, me with Terry Ross, and over time it became so natural. First and foremost, it wasn't that I didn't believe it. It just didn't feel like I knew it well enough or was comfortable enough to repeat it that it felt like it was mine. And so it was really the practice of just over and over again. Just like I go over a consent every single time, the same way with every single patient, I go over the same spiel, the qualifying the call, the going over a treatment plan. The conversations should go the same way every time, and the only different other piece of it is what the patient is bringing to you. And that makes it feel natural, and it is natural because this is where we need to go, right?
It's a skill, right?
Yes.
So the thing that I think people really don't realize in regard to selling is that it's a skill, and like any other skill, you feel weird and goofy and unskilled when
Right.
you start doing it. It's, I think, an experience that most people have is learning to ride a bicycle, right? When you first start trying to ride a bicycle, you suck. You
Yeah.
can't do it. You fall off of it. You can't even keep the bike upright, but you keep practicing and eventually you can get a little bit further before you fall down and a little bit further, and the next thing you know, you can ride a bike all day long. And
Yep.
selling's the exact same way. It takes perseverance, practice, etc. to build those skills. And I think that in order to start practicing and building those skills, really the first thing is that you have to realize that it's those internal beliefs that are blocking you, and you have to get over yourself a little bit so that you don't project onto the patients, and so that you can have the grace for yourself to practice the skill, practice the scripts. And there are a lot of great resources out, not just this one podcast video. So many people. There's Grant Cardone, who we already mentioned, J. Abrams. I know you really love Myron Golden.
I love Myron Golden. He has so much soul that he brings to it and to the topic of selling. And so he's one of my very favorites. Terry Ross has really been very influential
Yep.
for me. And actually Dan Kennedy. He writes a lot of books on sales, and he's a little gruff. He's like a grumpy old man.
He's the grumpy old grandpa that gives it to you like no BS, real deal, but he's like looking out for you.
Yeah. And when I first started reading him, I was just really offended by like his approach. But the more that I understand about like even Dan Kennedy, like his underlying like drive and motivation, really it comes from a really good place. And he'll like I've learned so much about management and selling, and his whole series is called No BS whatever. No BS Guide to
Marketing, No BS Guide to Selling, No BS Guide to whatever part of your business.
And it's incredible. And then also one of our big mentors,
Alex, we're be remiss not to mention Alex and Layla. Alex actually just put out a book recently that if you struggle with selling and if you struggle with coming up with offers, $100 million offer.
Yeah, one of the best.
Fantastic book.
It's a fantastic book. And there's a ton of other stuff out there. And I think really it just comes down to finding what resonates with you, taking the time and the energy to get comfortable with it and learn it and practice it, because it is a skill. And over time, it'll become second nature and it'll become who you are, right? So
I hope all of that was helpful, and I hope that you go out and you crush sales in your med spa now. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe so you can follow us, get more awesome med spa secrets on how to run your med spa. And we'll see you next time.
all right, guys.